Okay, so let's now move on to the next part in the series, and that is something that we call naming alkanes. Okay, so up until now we have seen the general formula of alkanes and we did a few practice examples. Right now we are going to be looking at how do we name alkanes. So if you remember, we had something that we call the prefix and the suffix. Okay, and we say this the prefix part is something that tells us the number of carbon atoms, and the suffix tells us the homologous series. Now, since we already know that this is an homologous series of alkenes, so we already know the last part of this is going to be ane. So we only need to figure out what is going to be the prefix part of the name. Okay, so let us look at a few examples. Let us look at a few examples. So if I draw sort of a table here, then you've got the name, you've got number of carbon atoms, and you've got the molecular formula. Okay, so let's take the number of carbon atoms as 1, and now we can derive the name out of this. So we know that whenever there is the number of carbon atom is 1, it's called meth, and we know that we are talking about alkenes, so the homologous series of alkane has a ane. So this here now becomes methane. Okay, and if I talk about the molecular formula, it's going to look something like this. Okay, we'll draw the structures as well in a while, but let's just look at how do we name them. So if we now talk about, okay, let me just move this to a better place. Move this further downwards. Okay, yeah, I think this works. Okay, so let's not talk about two carbon atoms. Now, two carbon atoms means eth, right? The name derives from eth, and since it's an homologous series of alkanes, we call that as ethane. And by the general formula, because we know that when you have two carbon atoms, and if we plug this into the formula CnH2n plus 2, this comes as C2H2 plus 2, and this comes as C2H6. So the formula here is C2H6. Okay, now let's talk about three carbon atoms. Now when we have three carbon atoms, the prefix part is called prop. Okay, and the ene here of course comes from the homologous series of alkanes, and the formula then becomes C3H8. Now you should be able to figure out the general formula and plug it in by yourself. Okay, so for 4 carbon, the prefix is called but, the homologous series is ane, and here you'll have C4H10. Alright, and last you have pent, and the homologous series of ane, and you'll have C5H12. Okay, let's do one more, which is 6, that's called hex, and ane, and this is C6H14. Okay, so this is how we name alkanes. Now we will get into the detail of, because when you go into the past papers, you will see a lot of these getting mixed up with alkenes, and all of the other stuff as well. So we'll see how do we recognize it from structures. We'll do it in examples in the next video. Okay.